Well, my first reaction on hearing the news was to uh, really send Kathleen and Crona and Susie the deepest sympathy from Sabina and to myself. I had presented an award to Gay Byrne in June, and I had a letter from Kathleen after that, but also he dictated a letter to myself, and it was typical of the man. He was such a professional in every way. But I think I associate Gay Byrne really at the very heart of Irish broadcasting. When you think about it, in 1958, when he comes on through radio, and then 4 years later, 1962, when the arrival of television, he moves straight in, and of course, the Late Late Show becomes one of the longest running shows in history. But I think as well, I have always the view that Gay loved radio. I remember hearing him once say that as long as he had a sandwich and a microphone, he was going to be quite happy. And I quoted, I think, when I was presenting his award, Lord Reed's famous statement that good broadcasting is a nation talking to itself. And there's probably nobody who could better represent that. And then on through those years, and he was, I think what was interesting, someone else said about interviewing that is rather like peeling an onion. And maybe the difference, I think, in his time was that he saw how the good interview would come, and he had the patience to listen. And therefore that enabled people to be very revelatory, both in radio and on television. And I think as well, too, it is so important to recognise that, you know, a person would make a mistake from time to time in the interpretation of an issue or a theme, but he was addressing issues that provoked conscience, issues that made people think. And when I say, therefore, you know, taking up Lord Reid's point about a nation talking to itself, people began talking about things that they didn't feel free to talk about. We were coming out of a rather heavy authoritarian time. And I think, therefore, it changed Ireland and it changed the discussion. And even it had a ripple outside of broadcasting altogether when people would say, did you hear what was on the Late Late the other night? Or did you hear what was said on the radio and so on? And that is really broadcasting at its best. It isn't really about the consumption of an opinion that'll last a few seconds or just be rather narrowly provocative. And that, I remember too, I took part in the Late Late when it went out the country. I'm not sure about what a successful venture it was in different places, but one of the things that was how professional he could be. And we had there were one or two programs as well where people were of different opinions, and I actually had to come back on one and take up an issue, I remember. But what strikes me about it was he was steeped in broadcasting. What I would say very strongly is that as long as Irish broadcasting is ever spoken about, his name will come to people's lips so easily and so quickly, both as a person who also as well had standing behind all that professionalism, a conscience and a compassion. I remember the way, for example, the reading out of the letters, and he loved it, the people writing in about the response to the Kerry babies. And I think that where he's a great exemplar in relation to broadcasting was having the incisive intelligence to see how being patient into the interview, you'll in fact get the very best interview. But behind it all, behind the issues of the head and the calculation, there is a good heart. He had a good heart, and he was generous. And I have to say, in all of the recent times I met him, and particularly as he was heading into his illness, he was full of spirit. I mean, he and Kathleen would be at all of the different openings and the different shows. And I do very, very warmly send to Kathleen and Susie and Crona the very deepest sympathy. And I'm sure not just of myself, but of all the people, those listeners and viewers, and all particularly of his colleagues who would have worked with him over all those years. Oh no, but public service broadcasting is important, and he was very, very important to have stuck with it and to have given us so much. Well, an rud a stofig tí dam nó ma covrón ar ma han hénig ar som a van céile sai víni a hjóla a van céile Kathleen agus den éineach Crona agus Susie. Agus Tom Keense is common Europe san tácéin ar mé daine a kaint fi cuasa créileán na tíire seo an bhunú in éidir chuig a haacnú a bhí sé feimú ar an radio go dtí in éidir seacadóna ar thosa sé an telefís go méid anam Gay Byrne I gcónaí I lán an éanaach I lán na dispóireachta. Agus I feimú ar an radio agus ar an telefís heb mé héon grá profisiúntacht agus caiidána buint leis. Agus ar bhela cáiri sé le muinte na tíire seo an áig go thuairt ar beidir ar néhí conspóideacha, beidir na héanaach ra ceap siad go raibh ar sír go iad a phlé gart. Agus an cuioine rinne sé sin, an cuioine dhírig sé conscious na tíire seo ar óbhir bhí cuid goméideach faoi ceilt. Agus ceap siad ná gráidir séirí a phlé, bhí sé go hianta an méid sin ó thaobh cuasaí déon láthachta. A carín rud éile, ceapim héin go raibh a gróin á rire leis an radio. Agus an nasc an ceangal speisialt atá an idir lucht éisteachta agus an denatá Jennifer Curry láthir. Agus cumála sin beidir nach bhfuil na distractions an agus is cuidan lum na thuirinte a gúirt sé, go raibh sé ar a thuúfnes os cór an microphone. Ach bhís an cuioin ar cuis sé beidir an seo is tómhachtaí agus is starí dúile don léit ó níor a cuireann tú an seo sin a gomráid leis na seos an éile ar fud an dán. Is ionach an méid a bhí buinte amach agus cumás a bhain sé leis. Ó nó ba cógamach méid Harbheith bhuiag go agus an áireacht ó thaobh cuasaí créileán atá fáca.